Good morning. I'm just setting some things up, and today we're going to be talking about some of the ramifications of VR and what they hold for its future. Right after I set some things up. Just setting up the periscope now. For coffee today, I've got a light roast, True North from Starbucks. It's pretty tasty. And for cereal today, I've got a mix of pretty much everything I've got in the cupboard. I'm calling it my Uber cereal, but really it's just a bunch of junk thrown together. Check that out here. Look at that beautiful stuff. Alright, now we're live on Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch. And I'm just gonna add Instagram into the mix, because why not? Alright, welcome everybody to the breakfast broadcast. Today I'm gonna be eating, drinking coffee, and talking about the ramifications of VR. So ramifications being negative consequences. Shit that's going to happen in the future that we don't really want. But they are unintended side effects of virtual reality and the platforms that are coming out with it. So I'm going to start off by defining presence a little bit. So presence is the subjective experience of being in a place that feels real. So when you have true presence in a video game, to the player it feels like they're there. So they lose touch with things going on around them. If anybody really speaks in the room or something moves in the room or touches them, it will throw them completely out of the game. They'll lose their presence. With virtual reality, as the sense of presence is more real than it ever has been. You can put someone on a swing set or a roller coaster in VR and have them instantly feel like there's butterflies in their stomach because their brain's telling them that they're there, but they're not there because they're seeing things move with their eyes, they're hearing things, but they're not feeling the movement inside of them. So VR has a ways to go before it will actually establish a real presence without making you feel sick. But when it does, it's going to lead to a bunch of unfun things. A quote from Sir Fun in response to my talk yesterday about the future of VR is, "I think it messes with how the brain makes some perceptions emotionally salient and some not, because it confuses the perceptual boundaries. It also confuses the emotional responses that evolve to deal with real situations." And yeah, that's a big problem. Having presence in a video game and just being in a virtual world too much of the time certainly displaces people from reality and makes emotions more confusing, because in a virtual world emotions don't matter so much. No one in Mario cares if you get angry. You can get angry online in first-person shooters, but it's not the same. There's no real emotional consequences to reacting angry and throwing things around the room when you're playing Call of Duty. But if you do that in real life, it's going to cause some problems. So that would be a situation where someone can become emotionally damaged because they don't know how to emotionally react in real situations. One thing that's going to suck about VR in the future is groups of teenagers standing in circles, all with their VR headsets on, and even though they're in the physical space together, they're not actually with each other in virtual space. They're actually standing in circles of other teenagers in virtual space. When I was in high school, people used to do this with cell phones, and the adults of my generation said that we were all disconnected from society And you know what? To an extent, we were. But but try not to glare at them too hardly. Another thing that's going to happen in the future of VR that we don't really want to happen is there's going to be a large number of individuals that succumb to not using technology in balance with a normal, healthy lifestyle. So like the first VR headsets, they're literally going to be VR headsets that you put on your head, and with cords too, so that's very stifling. It's not healthy. It might be arguably healthier than sitting at a computer with a mouse and keyboard, or sitting on a couch with a little console joypad, but it's still got a long way to go before it's truly physically and actively healthy, which would basically that'd be like holograms. So we're a ways away from that, but there's going to be a lot of unhealthy people addicted to VR, like couch potatoes. We're addicted to television. VR potatoes are going to be addicted to VR. They're going to prefer to live their lives in a virtual world, and that's what they're going to do with their free time, is they're just going to be in a virtual world and look however they want to look, be almost whoever they want to be, and it's going to be not good in a lot of ways. A couple more bites of my breakfast. I am looking forward to the education aspect of VR, but when you combine the education that VR offers with things that we don't really want people to know how to do well, like killing people, then it becomes a real problem. I grew up with consoles and was trained in tactics to kill other people. Basically every American that grew up with Call of Duty or Counter-Strike or first-person shooters like that grew up knowing how to go into a combat situation effectively. So you know that you throw the flashbang in first, and then you go in while they're blind, and you shoot them in the middle of their body because that's where you're most likely to get a hit zone before they can see you again. I know this very deeply. It's encoded into me because I've done it thousands of times, as well as others in my generation has. But VR, they're actually going to have guns. It's going to feel much more like they're actually in the situation, and when they go to do that in reality, they're going to already have the skills. So school shootings are going to be, as they have been increasing in years, have more headshots in them, as horrible as that is. But we're getting better at doing everything, and VR is a training ground for horrible people to do horrible things. Killers will be better killers, thieves will be better thieves. Grand Theft Auto, a game designed around the idea of being a criminal, stealing cars, going out and committing crimes, that kind of thing. On console, it's different, but in virtual reality, it's going to be much more like a training ground for some of these tragic things to actually happen. A couple more bites of my breakfast. Tasty cereal today. So with new forms of media comes new forms of societal trolling. Propaganda and fake news will become harder than ever to determine false. Virtual reality broadcasting and news will skip most people's filters. They used to say that seeing is believing. When television first came out as it became a guiding beacon of public opinion. Anything people seen on TV they would believe to a large extent. There's two videos that were released within the past couple of years. One being The Fight for Fallujah, which is a VR tour of a battle in Fallujah. a city that's been completely destroyed by war. And then there was another video released of refugees fleeing places like Fallujah. And these videos, it feels completely different than traditional forms of media, because you can look around, you can see from a perspective that you've never been able to see from before. And just like the moon landing could have been faked, people weren't sure of it, but basically everybody watching the moon landing at the time, the majority of them just believed it. It wasn't until an afterthought occurred that people thought, well, hey, maybe this whole thing could have been faked. Well, I guarantee you there is going to be a VR experience of the moon landing. And people will know it's fake because of the context, but let's say we're going to Mars for the first time. Is it possible that a country might plant a flag on Mars in virtual reality and say that they actually did it, and people are more likely to believe it because it's in virtual reality? I think so. I think we're definitely going to see propaganda and fake news in VR that's going to be more difficult to disbelieve than ever before. And it's going to be dangerous, because big production studios that can afford the CG to do these kind of things, it could create a terrifying slew of fake news and propaganda, the likes of which the world's never seen. If a central authority had complete control of the media in your country, and they're producing 360-degree media, it's really hard to deny. There's been so many wars fought over fake news and propaganda that the ones that will be fought are going to be hard to convince the fighters that what they're doing is they're doing for the wrong reasons, and that what they believe isn't true. A couple more bites of my breakfast. Virtual reality and augmented reality really go hand in hand, because the first true virtual reality platforms, they're locked right onto your head, so they block off your sight of the external world, which you need to move around and navigate. So to use VR comfortably in the real world, they're going to be adding cameras on the front of future VR headsets that will give you the ability to augment your reality with an overlay. So you can have a computer screen that's semi-transparent, and then you can see everything else in the room just like normal. And then you add on top of that augmented reality. So you get like metadata around things around you. You look at the sky and it will tell you the weather for the day, and you look at a shop and it will tell you the prices on some of the items, and you look at people and it will give you like their social media links and things like that. But I think the downside of augmented reality is definitely that people will choose to augment their reality to cover up things that they don't want to see. They'll basically use augmented reality as a filter to make them feel better about the world. One horrible example of this would be, I can see there being an app someday to replace all the homeless people in your city with flower beds or trees or even dancing, singing Disney characters, for Christ's sakes. If people don't want to see something and there's an app to cover it up, they'll cover it up. It's bound to happen. Why look at your dirty dishes when you could have a 400-foot fish tank full of dancing mermaids? Why have a brown dog when he could be an RGB LED rainbow disco dog? I mean, you're just going to have people not even looking at what's in front of them anymore because they're overlaying it with this new reality. And we've seen that in the past. I mean, I spend a lot of my time at my computer desk looking at the world through a square/rectangular screen. But it's not my whole world, and I don't wear my computer screen on my head 16 hours a day. But eventually people are going to do this, and it's not far off. Couple more bites of my breakfast, and I'll give some closing statements on the ramifications of VR. So with new forms of media come new forms. Hold on, I gotta drink my coffee. There's gonna be lots of crappy things to come with VR that we don't really want to see in the world, but as part of our dystopian future, as it were, they're bound to happen. For better or for worse, we need to tread carefully in the grounds of virtual reality and be careful that we don't do anything too catastrophic, that VR does more bad than it does good. Thank you for joining me on this morning's episode of the Breakfast Podcast. I'm Christopher Michael S., and you can catch me at CX Damon.